Greetings, a big Shavu Banim Ligvulam. The children have returned to their borders, one might say, and it's been quite some time. I was 3 weeks at camp, doing the camp for kids, and then afterwards there's the 3-week break for the yeshiva world. So it's good to be back here. We are on the 11th day of the 6th month of the year. That's Elul. Don't get messed up with June. And we are in the last few weeks of 5-7-7-8. Today's title of the class, with Hashem's help. Don't forget, nothing has changed here. Even though we haven't been together for a month and a half, our slogan is still the same. These classes are to bring us one step closer to Hashem, to God, to improve ourselves, and to bring the exile, bring the divine presence out of exile. Today's class will be the first part, will be a couple of parts, and it's a very, very important subject. The title is, Have the Jews Been Trumped by Trump? Have the Jews been trumped by Trump? In parentheses, we are going to get into an issue that, unfortunately, when we think about repenting or returning to Hashem, tshuva really means to return to Hashem, even though in English they call it repentance. But the issue that we're going to discuss here is definitely connected to a national need to repent, to return to Hashem. And the issue that we will be speaking about in the next few weeks, that we need big time to repent, is the concept of looking for Gentile, non-Jewish help. Does this help the Jewish people, or does it bring the Jewish people down? Does it endanger the Jewish people? When we start looking towards the nations of the world, when we put our hope and salvation in the hands of the nations of the world as if we are dependent on them, how does this affect the Jewish people? And this is, as I said, there is a big need out there to repent on this subject. We will see amazing things. Unfortunately, I personally, I've looked around for many, many years. I haven't really heard this discussion. So you're going to hear it now, and with Hashem's help. Okay, before we get into this, there are important, we try always, first of all, the issues that we talk about, we try to take issues on that are real life issues, not something from textbooks, but something that deals with today's issues. And there's a need. There's definitely a need for me to speak about a few news-related incidents, which are very, very important. Number one, as we know, about 2.5 weeks ago, there was the Pride Parade in the holy city of Jerusalem, and I was there at that Pride Parade, so-called Pride Parade, and thank God this year I wasn't arrested after the last, I think, 3 years being arrested at the parade, not exactly at the parade, but by leaving the parade. That's when I was arrested 3 times. So thank God this year we came to the parade and we left it unscathed. So here's what happened. This is an event that happened on August 3rd. There was a group of adults that entered a pizza shop on Ben Yehuda. It's on Ben Yehuda 2 Street. Anybody that is hungry, check it out. There's a group of people, they went and they entered a pizza store on Ben Yehuda 2, and there was one of the guys was wearing a Pride t-shirt. Now this is one day after the Pride parade. This is on Friday. And one of the workers at the pizza place came up to him and asked him if he was gay. After affirming that he was, the employee quickly asked this guy and his friends to leave the restaurant. The Jerusalem pizzeria is facing up to 50,000 shekel in damages and lawsuits being brought against one of its employees for discrimination against this gay man, this gay fellow. I don't know if he's happy, but he's gay. Anyways, one of these guys is urging people on Facebook to have a boycott of this pizzeria. And in the meantime, the Jerusalem Post, which printed this article, he's received 1,500 likes, hundreds of comments. My friend was refused service because of who he is. I am appalled by this blatant homophobia, and I hope that you all will join me in boycotting this despicable establishment. Sky received overwhelming support online and wants to use his experience to show Israelis and Americans the reality of what he views as two different Israels. There's one Israel that's similar to Tel Aviv, which is very open, and another Israel, Israel 2, which is similar to what happened in the restaurant. According to the restaurant, the comment of the restaurant, or the chef of the restaurant, Chef Sassy Vargas, said that the employee's wages were docked and he's not currently employed at the restaurant. He's just one guy who said something emphasizing that the service is our priority in the restaurant. The group said that terminating the employee was a step in the right direction, but anyways is moving the case forward to bring in Israel awareness of discrimination against the LGBT people. Okay, so interesting case. Number one happens to be an employee that said something. Question is, they got rid of this employee. They docked his wages. Question is, why is this group so gung-ho on boycotting this restaurant? A person said something, and he's just an employee over there. He just works there. He could say anything that he wants. Why are you making a whole issue of it and boycotting a restaurant which has owners and a chef and other workers? You might be affecting a lot of the other people when it's one person's opinion. If they're so liberal and they're very, democratic minded, it seems to me like kind of one person said something. It's not the owner, just some guy that works there. That's my first question to this group of people. By the way, the person that filed this complaint, he's a rabbinical, I use that word very lightly, loosely. He's a rabbinical student at the HUC, Hebrew Union College. Originally, the guy's from Cincinnati, and he's in this institution here, of course, with either conservative or reform. Not familiar with it. Okay, but more to the issue. Forget about boycotting a place based on one person's opinion. But let's tackle the issue. It's an unbelievable. This story just got to me, and it's really unbelievable because in this week's portion of the week, we have an unbelievable concept that is given to us in the holy book called the Sifri. The Sifri is a rabbinical work by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the author of the Sifri, and it is on two books of the Bible, on the book of Numbers, Bamidbar, and Deuteronomy, Dvarim. And this is called Midrash Halacha. The sages, okay, the Jewish law that is brought out from these two books of the Bible. And he writes there an unbelievable concept, which is brought many times in the Torah. In this week's parsha, in this week's portion, Deuteronomy 23:5, it talks about various nations that even if they convert to Judaism, they are not allowed to immediately marry into the Jewish people. They have to wait for a certain amount of generations. For example, if an Egyptian person converts, which is fine, they are not allowed to marry somebody for 3 generations, which means their number 1 generation, their son is the 2nd generation, and the grandson is the 3rd generation. Once the 3 generations pass, they are allowed to marry. On the other hand, nations such as Ammon and Moab, even if they married, we're talking about the males of Ammon and Moab, not the females, even if they convert, they are not allowed to marry a Jewish woman. They have to marry a convert as themselves. But they're not allowed to marry a Jewish from birth woman. And the question is, why is the Torah so harsh against these two nations, Ammon and Moab? On the other hand, a nation such as Egypt or Edom, which is Esau, Jacob's brother. Now we're talking about nations that we see in the Bible. We see were very, very cruel against the Jewish people. The Egyptians, just one little example, they killed 10,000 babies. During the decrees of throwing the baby boys that were just born into the Nile River, 10,000, according to our sages, 10,000 were killed. That's a lot. We're not even going to go in to the slaves and what was done to them and how many slaves died. Cruelty that was done to them. We're talking about, when we talk about the nation of Edom, we're talking about for thousands of years, they've perpetrated pogroms, holocausts, inquisitions, you name it. Millions or billions of Jews probably have been killed under the sword of Edom, of Esau. However, they are just limited for a few generations to marry into the Jewish people after they convert. So the question is why? So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai gives us an unbelievable foundation. It just like sets our head straight, gets our head on straight. This is Judaism, not what we thought. And it says, Gadol hamachti mehaoreg. It is worse for somebody to bring a person to sin than it is to kill a person. Why? Because when you kill a person, you could still have a share in the world to come. Even if, God forbid, somebody killed a person. You could still earn with a lot of hard work and a lot of repentance, you could still earn a portion in the world to come. But baby, if you cause people to sin, thank you. If you cause people to sin, then you're in hot water, because you also lose this world and you also lose the next world. So that's an amazing concept, not what we're used to thinking, that the worst person in the world is this killer. There are worse people than murderers. Who are the worst people than murderers? Those people, whether they're Jews or non-Jews, is irrelevant. They're both held responsible. Those people that bring the Jewish people to sin. When the Jews came to the land of Israel, some 70 years ago, the wave of Middle Eastern Jews that came from the North African countries, when the Sephardic Jews came into the land of Israel, they were destroyed spiritually by the establishment here in Israel. Whether they were the Moroccans, whether they were Yemenites, people's souls were destroyed. That is much, much worse than a person that goes out with a AK-7 or a 22 and blows away a person. They're both not good, but one is worse than the other. So therefore, to summarize, the nations of Ammon and Moab, the males, are not allowed to marry a Jewish woman for all eternity time. Why? Because of the fact that these two nations caused the Jewish people in the desert to sin. If you remember, when the Jews were enticed by the daughters, by the women of Moab, Ammon was right there also with their women. So these two nations brought the Jewish people to sin. The Egyptians and the Esav and the Edom people, they murdered the Jewish people. And therefore, the conclusion of the holy book Sifrei on this week's portion is that it's much, much worse to cause one to sin than it is to kill a person. So therefore, let's put the cards on the table. Let's go back to this case about a guy walks in to a pizza place. Wearing a G Pride t-shirt. Okay? Now, let's look at this. If somebody walked into your store, a restaurant or your business or store, they walked in half naked, do you have the right to toss them out? Now, I'm not interested whether you have the right or you don't have the right. This is insulting. This is my business. You are not going to walk into my business half naked. I don't care what your story is. Get dressed, come back. But right now, you're out of here. If a person walks in with a swastika on his t-shirt, you're wearing a t-shirt of a swastika, or white power t-shirt, I don't care if what the law says. This person who wants to put an end to the Jewish people, he is going to not stay in my house, in my store, or my business. I am going to take him and toss him out. Toss him out of the store. If a Jew walks in with a t-shirt that we are going to desecrate, let's hear it for the desecrators of the Sabbath. He has a t-shirt on with somebody eating pork. Let's eat pork. I don't care who he is. He's out of my store, out of my restaurant, out of my business. You don't come in to my store. You don't have the right to come into my store and insult with your message on your t-shirt. Okay? There's a lot of t-shirts that I could stand, 1,000,001. But there's certain ones that there's no entrance. And folks, this is such a serious transgression. This homosexuality, it's such a serious transgression, not only for those that are perpetrating it, but unfortunately, because of the fact that we are connected, all Jews are connected, this is in the past and in the present and also in the future. This is a boomerang against the entire Jewish people. When this is going on, when this is being supported, when you're proud of it, if you walk into my store or into my restaurant, to my business, and you happen to be that, I'll serve you. I don't know who you are. Okay, even if somebody tells me that this is, who you are, I'm happy to talk to you about it, tell you, what you could do, try to give you some good suggestions. I'm not going to toss you out. But when you come into a store with a shirt that cries out, G, pride. Your pride of a transgression against the Torah, against the Bible. Now imagine coming into a mosque or an Arab neighborhood and tearing up the Quran. You could understand they would get upset. Now, it was a stupid thing that you did. Shouldn't have done that. So therefore, take it any way you want. If the Nazi swastika on a person's shirt, white power, if those that are interested in killing Jews, they are not as bad as those that are coming with the G pride, because their pride in this sin, which is called an abomination, which brings upon the entire world, not just the Jewish people, but the entire world, tragedies and calamities and destruction. So, folks, I hope that this person does not get fined of $50,000. If he, God forbid, does, I will give you details, hopefully, how we could help this person out. Because this is a slap in the face. To come into somebody's store with something insulting and vulgar, such as that t-shirt, whether you understand it or not. Because a person that walks in with a white power, or the Nazi, or the person that walks in half naked, they might think it's 100% kosher. That's fine. That's fine. They might think that way. It doesn't interest me the way they think. I know the truth. And the truth is, this is vulgar, this is insulting. You're walking into my store, you're not going to get served here. Issue number 2 on the news. I recently was invited to a ceremony somewhere in the world. It was a circumcision of a newborn Jewish baby. And when I'm reading the invitation, even though you're not supposed to invite people to the meal of the circumcision, there was an invitation. You know, this is outside of the land of Israel, not familiar with the law. And I look at the invitation, and there's something very interesting, which I wanted to take a little bit further. It says the following, that at such and such hour, we will be having a morning shacharit, a morning prayer service, which will be an egalitarian minyan. Now, looking up what the Webster Dictionary says about, because there's some faces here that look a little bit confused, what is this egalitarian? So I will quote the dictionary. Believing in or based on the principle that all people are equal and deserve equal rights. Now, I'm not talking about people that are Reform or conservative Jews. I'm talking about people that consider themselves to be modern, religious, something to that effect. So actually, you know, what it means is that during this prayer service, there's equality, which means, Mrs. Jones, can you do us a favor? Can you please pick up the Torah can you please pick up the Torah for us? Oh, Mrs. Smith, can you please lead the services here? You know? Okay. Listen, I kind of liked the idea as long as we make sure that the idea is taken to the end. To be truthful with this idea. You want an egalitarian service? I'm all for it. But let's be truthful. Okay? Believing in or based on the principle that all people are equal and deserve equal rights. Well, baby, here, let's take it to the max. Let's take this truth to the max. Here's what we're going to do. We are not only going to circumcise boys, because this is not equality, because everybody deserves to be circumcised. Therefore, there's a big issue, for example, in the Muslim world, it's called FGM, female genital mutilation, FGM, okay? And it happens in many countries by thousands, tens of thousands, who knows? When a girl is born, we have egalitarian services here, man. Boys are circumcised, and we are going to circumcise also the women. So let's not, the next birth, I hope that they will also circumcise the baby girl. That's number one. Number two, I'm going to ask them, please, when you call up people for the Torah, there's no such thing as a Kohen, a priest. There's no such thing as a Levite. And there's no such thing as an Israelite. Everybody is entitled to go up to that Torah. We don't need a Kohen. This is unequal, because in Judaism, the Kohen is not equal to the Levite. The priest is not equal to the Levite, and Levite ain't equal to the Israelite. So let's really make this service egalitarian. And we are going to have no priests, no Levites, and no Israelites. Not only that, we're really going to make it egalitarian. You know how we're going to do it? We're going to call down from our window. We're going to call down to the nations of the world to join us, please. We don't need 10 Jews to pray, baby. We need 10 people to pray. And it doesn't matter who those people are, because we are liberal and we want an equal prayer service here. So let's do it. If you're willing to do all of that, hey, I'm going to join you. I'll be with you. But let's not play games over here. All of a sudden, this egalitarian service becomes something where men and women are so-called equal. Let's take it to the max. Okay, next subject on the news that must be discussed. If a person, we've discussed this some months ago, where we took an amazing booklet written by some of the leading rabbis in the so-called religious Zionist movement, by the likes of Rav Yecheskel Levinstein, the likes of Rav Tau, great scholars within the religious Zionist movement. We spoke in detail about their booklet that they came out, talking about today what is in the world is happening with the army. What is going on with the army? That it's not haphazard, it's not by chance, it's not just one person falling and making a mistake. There is an agenda going on here to take away the Judaism from the army, to take away the Judaism from the soldiers. That is what is happening now, and it is not by chance. It is by the establishment, the army establishment, that this is taking place. Not a week goes by with stories how religious soldiers all of a sudden are facing trials, are facing humiliation by the media for standing up for Jewish laws. For example, a week ago or so, a week and a half ago, there were a group of 30 soldiers or so, and there was an exercise coach. Happened to be the exercise coach was a girl that was not dressed in a modest way, and she is teaching the paratroopers. It was 30 paratroopers, all religious. Or in the group there were 30. There were more people, but there were a group of 30 religious people, and they asked very nicely and very thoughtfully that they're religious and it's not modest, and they turn their backs in order that they should not see immodest. We're talking about, think about it, we're talking about an exercise coach in shorts and in a t-shirt, sweating. Okay, get your imagination going here. not something that anybody should be looking at. How much more so religious soldiers. Anyways, it happens to be that the woman coach, she's very well connected, her father, and she went and spilled the beans, and it's a whole story now. In fact, the commander of that base has said if there's any dishonor showed to women, the people in the paratroopers units will be thrown out of the units. Now this is very interesting, if there's any dishonor, because let me tell you, baby, what's dishonor? You know what's not honoring a woman is what they do today in our times with the advertisement and the billboards and the TV and the movies. They've taken women, and instead of showing us their greatness and their purity and their spirituality and their wisdom, everything today is based on, they took women and they dishonor them. And the only way to show that someone's going to notice women is if we take off half of their clothes or 3/4 of their clothes. That's the way that we're going to get some, someone's going to look at us. We can't look at a woman for who she is. We have to look because of the fact that she's dressed half naked. Totally disrespect for the personality of who a woman is. So if we're talking about dishonor, man, these people are the heads of dishonoring women. No respect for women. They're interested in the body of the woman, selling her. Every week, not a week goes by where soldiers are forced, if they're to listen to girls that are singing, which is against Jewish law. It's not considered to be modest behavior. And if they refuse, if they step outside, then they're going to be tried. Every week, not a week goes by where we hear that soldiers are being forced to take off their beards in various situations. Not a week goes by when we hear about difficulties that as the army, as their agenda to show equality, that there is no difference between men and women. So they're trying to push this agenda of taking women and putting them into fighting units. So therefore, half of the fighting units are religious soldiers. The amount of religious soldiers in fighting units and elite units, it's like 40-50%. It's an amazing amount compared to the population of the religious people. So there are soldiers, there's dozens and soldiers who are in terrible predicaments, which they stick these women into these fighting units. Just today, if that's not bad enough, just today the army announced that they are going to investigate 2 soldiers that opened fire on the last, it's kind of funny, opened fire in the last, since March. The Arabs in Gaza have been coming close to the border, so-called border between so-called Israel. Gaza is a part of Israel, but we'll just call it so you understand what I'm talking about. They're coming up to the border and they're shooting and they're throwing rocks and Molotov cocktails. This has been going on since March. So one of these incidents, and of course the balloons and the kites, and they've destroyed so much of the southern, they've burnt to a crisp so much of the southern part of the land of Israel, and this continues to go on for months and nothing is really done. So now we've heard the great news that 2 Jews that opened fire on the enemies of the Jewish people who are trying to kill us. It's an amazing thing. And now they are going to be investigated. So what do you think this does to the army? Well, let me tell you what this does to the army. Because just a month before, the son of Moshe Feiglin, he was thrown out of his elite army unit because of the fact that he spoke up. Let's look what he said. In a viral Facebook post last week, Avi Feiglin wrote that soldiers should not have to heed orders that endanger them in order to spare Arab lives. Feiglin related how several months ago during a brigade educational evening, the commander of the Kfir Brigade's Charuv Battalion had talked about an operation he conducted that enabled Arabs to shoot at his soldiers during Operation Protective Edge in 2014 near the Gush Etzion community of Migdal Oz. The goal of the operation was to identify and capture terrorists who had routinely been shooting at soldiers containing riots in the area, Feiglin wrote. According to the plan, the soldiers would handle the riots as usual, while snipers would be stationed at the entrance gate of Migdal Oz. When the snipers identified who was shooting at the soldiers during the riots, they would neutralize him with a bullet to the foot. Avi blasted what he called the impotent plan, concluding, more than all the injustices in this story, I am enraged by two things. We use soldiers as bait to catch terrorists, not killing them. Standing in front of us is a commander from the Charuv Elite Battalion, now a special unit, presenting the events as a war story, as an operational success. That commander's place is in jail, and after being booted out of the IDF, and also the whole chain of commandment of the IDF that approves such fearful activity. Avi said he intends to refuse orders that endanger soldiers' lives in the name of political correctness, and called on other soldiers to do the same. I am still a soldier in regular service, and any time my blood and the blood of my comrades is abandoned in the name of political correctness, in this sad, warped value system by the general staff of the government, I intend to refuse orders, and I call on all to do the same. An amazing thing. So think about it. It's amazing what's going on. Then no one's calling a timeout. No one's calling a timeout. I remember half a year ago, there was an interview by one of the leading rabbis of the Gush Etzion, just mention them, Rabbi Meidan. And Rabbi Meidan says, I don't know what you're talking about. That there's calls, he said, in the media and by the government and in the army that the religious are trying to make the army a religious army. What in the world are you talking about? You know how many Jews come to the army religious and they leave the army not religious? What are you talking about? It's exactly the opposite. That the army is an institution which secularizes, when it's not making the Jewish people, it's not making, listen to what you're saying. We continue to send our students to the army, no problem. You just keep on stepping on our face. You just keep on stepping all over us. We are a doormat. Just step on us, man. It's unbelievable. No pride. There's no backbone here. No one to call a timeout. Listen, until this changes, you know what? The next group of soldiers we are not sending our soldiers to the army until things are changed. Until we see a true change, where our soldiers are not going to be faced with such secular coercion. Until this changes, until they could keep their religiosity in the army, we will not send our boys to the army. It's really amazing. I'll tell you something. One of these articles, I have many. I save them all. One of these articles, I caught off Arutz Sheva, the A7 in Israel. And right next to this article talking about how religious soldiers were forced to listen to a woman singing in a concert, right next to it in a picture, there was a rabbi from the Samaria area with his students, and the headline read, the yeshivas send in droves, they send, all their students to the army. So there's a picture of a rabbi smiling as he's sending off his students to the army. So this is an amazing thing. Where is the pride here? Where is Torah here? Why not call a timeout? Call a timeout until things change. We are now willing to be stepped upon. It's unbelievable. The amount, as I explained, the amount of religious fighters in elite units is 40 to 50%. What is the amount of commanders once we get past the lower level commanders? What is the level in the higher echelon? 0%. That's what the level is. So we're having such a tremendous effect on the army by the fact that we're sending thousands and tens of thousands over the years of yeshiva people. As the situation is deteriorating day by day, the situation is deteriorating, and we don't have anybody to call them out. We don't have any rabbi that's going to call a time out, and we're not going to be stepped upon anymore. Until the army is a place that is acceptable for religious Jews, we will not send our students there, period. This is an amazing thing. We are once again the worshipers of the state, because we worship the army, we worship the state, and that comes before, unfortunately, Torah principles. The worshiping of the state of Israel. The worshiping of the IDF. Now listen, I'm not a person that I was in the IDF and I fought in the IDF. We're talking about today's situation. In today's situation, for many, many years now, if they paid me, I myself would not go. My children have not gone into the army, and I'm damn proud of that. When the army comes, a Jewish army, when the army comes to a place where a Jew, a religious Jew, could keep his religiosity and is not coerced with this secular coercion, no problem. When you're not endangering our boys, when you're not, who's paying the price here of this immoral behavior? Letting the enemies of the Jewish people get away with this and endangering the Jewish boys. This is a desecration of God's name. This is absurd. Last but not least, this will enter us into our series. Have the Jewish people been trumped by Trump? We will discuss about the Jewish concept, Chesed Leumim Chatat, the charity, the good deeds done by the nations of the world is a sin. What does that verse mean in the book of Mishlei written by King Solomon? Chesed Leumim Chatat, the charity, the good deeds, the kindness that the nations present, there is a sin behind that. What does that exactly mean? And to get a feeling of what we're talking about, this is unbelievable. Like, God sent me this today to open up this series, which is very, very important. Before we get into what happened today, let's just talk about recently. There was a University of Maryland, UOM, poll that was conducted. I think the person's name was Statner. They conducted a poll. How Israeli Jews view President Trump. And it's amazing statistics. The religious community, which includes the Haredi and includes religious community, the over 70% of the religious community support President Trump. It's an amazing numbers, 70%. We see in many religious websites, religious, Orthodox, super religious organizations, we see different numerical values that Trump is the Messiah of David, and how, you know, America and Trump and the glorified Trump. So it's about time we call a time out and let's get back to Torah. Let's get back to Judaism. This came today. U.S. President Donald Trump said during a rally in West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home. Yeah, West Virginia. On Tuesday, that Israel will have to pay a high price in its negotiations with the Arab Authority in return for his decision to move the American embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. Payday is coming, baby. Payday right around the corner. Hey, I thought out of the goodness of their heart, I thought out of being truthful that Jerusalem is from time end for the last 3,000 years. Jerusalem, it belongs to the Jews. I thought it was based on the Bible. I thought it was based on truth, history. Oh yeah, in return for his decision to move the American embassy to Israel to Jerusalem. Trump added that the PA will get something very good. Something very good. Very good for the Arabs is very bad for us, for the brothers. In return for the embassy move, once again, the Arabs will receive something very good in return for the embassy move, because it's their turn to receive next. Yeah. According to the report in Haaretz, he did not offer any details when asked on what the Arabs, excuse my language, will get, I said the P word, will get in return for the embassy move. The embassy move angered chairman, may his name be erased, Abbas, who declared he could no longer accept the role of the United States as a mediator in talks with Israel. In his remarks on Tuesday, Trump said that since Jerusalem is now off the table, Israel will have to give something in return to the Arabs. If there's ever going to be peace with the Arabs, then this was a good thing to have done. Now Israel will have to pay a higher price because it's off the table. Jerusalem is off the table right now, so the Jews are going to have to pay a higher price. The Arabs will get something very, very good because it's their turn next. How many times? How many times? How many years? You see this over and over again. It's the same old song. Remember that song, It's the Same Old Song? It's just like this recycled garbage. So with God's help, next week, we will start. This was just, I guess, we had to get some very, very important news issues. The Jewish idea behind these new news issues. How to correctly. The media is trying to brainwash us. Just by the way, it's an amazing thing. There's an organization called Chotem, which means stamp. And they do a great job. And they just uncovered the last week, there is a... they just uncovered last week on Arutz Sheva, they have, you click onto their link, and you see an amazing thing. There's this disgusting fund called the New Israel Fund, NIF, and they pour millions of dollars into Israel in trying to bring Israel to lose its Jewish quality and to become a state of all of its citizens, a nation like all other nations. But what's important in this new report that they came out with, they show how much funding so-called modern Orthodox organizations are receiving from the NIF. Man, this is Erev Rav. Unbelievable. Different organizations. For example, Kolech, which is a feminist, so-called religious, so-called feminist rag. How much money they receive? It's close to $1 million shekel. the so-called Rabbi, what's his name? Benny Lau. These people are being funded, and the list goes on with these organizations that are for taking the marriage and divorce away from the rabbinate, the chief rabbinate of Israel, and allowing people to get married the way that they want to, thus destroying the Jewish people. This evil organization, the New Israel Fund, and they show each organization how much money they're getting in order to take away the Judaism, the Jewish, the law of the Torah from the state of Israel. So that's what we're facing. We're facing battles all on. If you notice, the last 2 weeks, we've read in the portion of Shoftim and Kiteitzeh 3 times, 3 various verses that says Kiteitzeh lemilchama al oivecha or an machanecha. When you go out to fight a war against your enemy or against a different camp. Why are we mentioning this? This is the month of Elul. We always read, this is the month before the Judgment Day of the Jewish New Year. And the message, the main message is 3 times. Get it in your head. The main message is go out and fight. Whatever you could do. Everybody has their own, everyone has their own ways that they can go out and fight for the Torah, fight for the Jewish law. Everyone is able to. Some people are in the media, some people are rabbis, some people can get together demonstrations, some people could participate in demonstrations. Every one of us has the ability, and that's the message. When it comes Elul, it's time to get off our seats and Kiteitzeh lemilchama, go out and fight the battles. As much as we can, we must go out to fight these battles, because our Judaism, the land of Israel, everything right now, our backs are against the wall. Whether it comes to Judaism, whether it comes to the land of Israel, which is part of Judaism, our backs are against the wall. There's a tremendous war that's going on. And even people that look like they're religious on the outside, they are not. And they are trying to kidnap the Judaism and take the Judaism out of the Jewish state.